Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll masech this Makkot daf Beis. We're going to begin on Beis Amud Aleph, the Mishnah. Ketzad Edim Nasim Zaymimin. So here we're learning about when it comes to witnesses who become Edim Zaymimin, as we're going to end up seeing in a later daf, that witnesses who are accusing someone else of whatever crime it is, but it turns out that they were lying, they're plotting witnesses. So the law is that we will give them the same punishment that they wanted to give someone else, which is called the asisimul kasher zamam lasas ochib. What they wanted to do to someone else is what happens to them. So how do we find that this takes place? So we give an example which actually we don't find them getting the punishment that they wanted to give. So you accuse someone who happens to be a Kohen, because if you would call me a Ben Garusha, Ben Chalutza, it doesn't really mean anything. It may be slanderous. They're saying that I'm the son of a divorced mother, or my mother had Chalitza, but that doesn't really mean anything. So Rashi says, B'fanenu nisgar she'imo, in front of us your mother was divorced, koinim shenoylad, before you were born, v'harhu chol u'posel. And what the key Rashi says is you're a Kohen. They're testifying about a Kohen, and therefore he can't do the avoda, and you're basically causing problems for him. So ein oimrim, let's say it turns out that there's no way that they could have seen that she was divorced in front of them, because they were somewhere else, so there's no way they could have gotten to this location. So ein oimrim yaseh zeh ben grusha ben chalutza tachtav. We don't say that this person becomes a ben grusha ben chalutza, and on this, even though we know you have to be mazim both of them, not just one doesn't work. So it's interesting language of yasa zeh. This sounds like an individual, but again, it's according to the Ritva, he explains it's based on the pasuk of yasisim lo, they'll do to him. So it doesn't mean him and not the other aid. It has to be both, but it's using that same language. So we don't say that this guy's going to be a ben grusha ben chalutza. Let's say the Edim Zayimim are Taka Kohanim themselves. Doesn't even matter. We can't make them into ben grusha ben chalutza. We'll see why. Eloloikar bayim. Instead, we give them malchus. So we understand why this is found in Masechtas Makkos. The whole dinim of Edim Zayimim is because there are sometimes we will give malchus. And on this, Tosfos says that by giving malchus, it's considered to be kasher zomam. It's equivalent on some level to what they wanted to do, even though it seems like something different. It is a different punishment, but it's on the same caliber. Ayin Tosfos. Me'idan on ish pleinishu chayav l'golus. So let's say they testify this guy's supposed to go to Golus because he killed Bishogeg. So ein oimrim yigal zeh tachtav. If they're found to be Edim Zaymin, we don't have them locked up in the cities of refuge, which that will also be discussed in this Masech in the second parak, starting at Dav Zayin. But rather, we will say instead, we're going to say that they get Malchus. So Tosfos asked, "In timer, heichem yichayim l'chayv golus beidusin." How could you ever mechayiv someone to go to Golus? You can always say I was guilty. So the only time you're going to go to Golus, just like eating chalev, so you should be able to say the same thing. No, I murdered on purpose. Then the Marsha asked the Kasha that how could Tosfos say that you can say b'mezid hayisi, we hold the din of ein mesim estats Rasha. You can't make yourself the Rasha, ayin the Marsha. Anyway, so let's continue with the Gemara. So Hakait said eina edom nasim zaymin boile. It's not a case where you do the same punishment, you don't do the same punishment. But Meditani will come on. We're going to end up seeing later on of Amrohem, if they say to them, "Hey, chatamidam shahari boisahayam atem iman ahisan. You were with us somewhere else. You're in Chicago, so there's no way that you could have seen this here in New York. Hari elu zaymin. So these are zaymin. Mechlal de elu ein zaymin. So maybe these are not zaymin." So how do we understand our Gemara, our Mishnah? So Tana Hasamkoi. Our Tana is basing himself on the previous Masechta that we just finished just yesterday, which is Sanhedrin. That Koil has Zaymin min Makdimun Oisamisa. That when it comes to Zaymin, that they're going to always get the same Misa that they wanted to give to someone else. Chutz b'Zaymin bas Koyin. uboala. Now when it comes to a bas kohen, or the man that she had tashmish with, she'ein machdim l'oisa misa el misa cheres. We're not going to give them her misa, but rather a different misa. So, and we learned that over there because it says lasos ochiv v'loy lachaisai. So therefore, even though you wanted to give her the stronger punishment of sreifa, which is a bas kohen gets the punishment of sreifa, however, we will say instead you'll get the punishment of chenek. Says Rashi, al piem im heim b'chenek. Kafin hasam he b'sreifa v'in bo aleha b'sreifa el b'chenek. She gets sreifa, but the man that she was cohabited with gets chenek. Kishar eishes ish. Just like an eishes ish gets chenek, so too this man will get chenek. It's only an exception because of being mavaza, the family, because she comes from distinctive kohanim, that the punishment is more severe. Vazaymin mashkimin lumisa shechayevo as a boil. So we're going to give the Edom Zaymin what they wanted to punish the boil. Again, Rashi quotes, because it says, Kasher zom lasos l'ochiv, so ochiv l'achaisai. Okay. V'yesh Edom zemen acherim she'en oisin v'hen din hazama kolikar el malchus arboyim. So actually, that's the case. You're supposed to get the exact same misa. Sometimes you get kind of the same misa, because at least it's the misa of the man and not the bas kohen. And then there's times, like we see now in our Mishnah, as a segue to our Masechta, is that there's sometimes that the punishment has nothing to do with the crime. As we see in our Mishnah, so instead, we will give malchus. For some reason it says the word s. Okay. So minahanili. So for the Gemara, how do we know that taka we don't make them ben grushim and chutz? How do we know? How do we give malchus? So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Malakish, the Yomer Kro, the pasuk says v'astizmo kasher zomim, that you have to do what you planned. Lo to him, lo lazaro, not to his children, because when you make someone into a chol, you're not just affecting him, you're affecting his kids. It says Rashi, the im tiasohu chol, and if we make the Edom into chololim, v'hu koyin pasalta as zar l'oilam, so it will apostle all of his children. So even though it's true, by making this guy into a chol, they attempted, it's going to affect his children, but the punishment is only v'aseisim kasher zomam. We will only do to him what he wanted to do, which is only to him and not to his children. So therefore, we can't make him into a chol, because by making him into a chol, his children will be cholol. So 1 second. So why don't we just say we'll apostle him and not his kids? So be'inan kasher zomam also is v'leika. The problem is that it's no longer kasher zomam. Kasher zomam is you wanted to affect him and his kids, but we cannot affect you and your kids because the pasuk says lo, but we can't just affect you because that's not kasher zomam. So therefore, we can't do it, and therefore it's necessary instead to give you malchus. Barpada Omer Kavachaymer. He gives a different reason. Ma hamachal enu mischalel. Someone who is machalel enu mischalel. What does that mean? It says Rashi, kohen anois es a grusha. So you have a kohen who incorrectly married a grusha. Shemachalel es zaro. He makes his children to chalolim. However, interestingly enough, ein hu atzmo mischalel min hakahuna. Even though he was with a woman who's a gerusha, he married a gerusha, it does not make him a chol. Being a chol affects your children. It doesn't affect you yourself. So even though you did a maisa avera by marrying a kohen marrying a gerusha, it doesn't make you a chol, only your children. So again, maha machalel enu mischalel, because you yourself can't be a machal. So habol chalel. So when it comes to Edom who tried to be machal this guy, V'lochil was unsuccessful. It's certainly that they should not become chalal. So I'm asking Ravina, 1 second. If you're going to use that kavachimer, then you can never understand the way that Edom Zayman work at all anyway. Beis with Beis. Because ma cycle and uniskol, madach someone who gets skila, because it's only kasher zaman below kasher also. Now, if you actually are successful, then even though you were later found to be Zayman, but since you were successful in killing this guy, for whatever reason, you're not killed. Let's just say because of Gzer Sakosov, Kasher Zamalo Kasher also. So so maybe the person who just, there was a Gemar din on you, and then you were found to be an Zayman, so maybe you shouldn't get skila, but that doesn't make sense because that's precisely the case of Adam Zayman. So you cannot use this as Kavachimer. Mikara. We're forced to establish that which we said before. Okay. Fine. So that is the first piece. Weiter. The second thing our Mishnah mentioned is Me'idim Anu B'ish Ploinish Yuchayev Golos V'chul. So Min Hanamili, how do we know if Adam Zayman accuse you for killing B'Shaygeg that we give the guy Malchus instead of putting the Adam Zayman into Golos? So Min Hanamili, Samaray Shalkash never Kra. It says, Hu Yonus El Achas Arim. Only the person who Taki killed should run to the city. Hu V'loi Zayman. So it's a miyat to exclude Zayman. Fine. So Rav Yochanan Aimer Kavachimer. Okay? So the kasha some people ask is, well, maybe the Zaymim doesn't need to run to Golos because there's no Gol Adam, but really they do have to go to Golos. So like what would be the chiddush in that, I guess. Rabbi Yochanan, maybe a kasha, I don't know. Rabbi Yochanan Kavachimer Mahu Shiasa Ma'isa B'Mezid Madach, a person who did an action on purpose. Einu Goyla. He's not going to go to Golos because you don't go to Golos if you kill B'mezid. It's only B'shaygeg. So Hain, these witnesses, Shul Asa Ma'isa B'mezid. They did something B'mezid, but it wasn't a Ma'isa B'mezid. So Hain didn't Shul Yigu. So then certainly they shouldn't go to Golos. V'hinoi said us. V'aloidinu. Who Shul Asa Ma'isa B'mezid. You can say it the other way around. The person who did an action on purpose illegally, why don't they go to Golos? Ki hechadol to having late kapara. Maybe because what they did was so heinous that they shouldn't receive a kapara. So Hein Shlosa Ma'asim Amazed, their action wasn't an action, it was Bedibor, which is not as strong as an action, but it was B'mezid. So Nami Ligu Kihechnahamu Kapara. So maybe Taka, we should look at a Pufakert, that the whole notion of going to Golos is not a punishment per se, but it's an opportunity to get kapara. And therefore, because of that, maybe they would go to Golos. Therefore, we're going to again say Reish Lakish's answer based on the diak of Hu V'lo Zayman. Arma Ula. Rem is Leidim Zayman Minaterminayin. How do we have a hint to Leidim Zayman? So Rem is Leidim Zayman of Haksavi says Lokasher Zamam. It says explicitly it's not a remez, there's a whole parsha about it. Oh, remez leidim zayim shaloikim minaterminayin. How do we get malchus? The pasuk says vastikos tzaddik yeshuas a rasha. You make the tzaddik into a tzaddik. The rasha is a rasha. V'hayabin hakas a rasha, and then you hit the rasha with malchus. Understand? Mishum vastikos tzaddik yeshuas a rasha. V'hayabin hakas a rasha. What is the connection between the two? Ella, the pasuk is telling it this: Eidim shehershiwas a tzaddik. The Eidim who came and tried to falsely testify about someone who was righteous or innocent, and saying that he was a rasha. V'yasa Eidim Achrin, the second group come that stikos a tzaddik by saying Imanu Hayisem, the first group, you were with us. So therefore, the tzaddik was really a tzaddik, Dimikara, V'shavinu lahani rishayim, and therefore they made at the same time this first group of witnesses as rishayim. V'hayim bin hakas a rasha. There's sometimes that the Eidim Zayim will get malchus. But typically Moisana. So why don't we, instead of this whole drasha, learn out from Moisana of not bearing false witness? Says Rashi, Kol oinshe lavin, any lav, the punishment is malchus. El b'makom shmir shachal boy oinish, v'kan she'enu yochel oinshe b'oinish shekos b'hen yilkus, so you should give malchus. Where it says, Mishum dahavi lav she'en bo maisa, chol lav she'en bo maisa, ein loikin lav. Even though it's true, based on the loisana, you should give malchus. However, it's a lav shein bo maisa, so you don't give malchus. Okay. Tanabana. Let's look at question 5. Eidim zaymin shein behen oinish to kasher zaman menolan deloikin. How do we know you get malchus? Because it says by Parshas Malchus, v'tztikos atzadik v'shos a rasha, And ve'en kan l'hasker sitkas atzadik v'yirshus achayev ela be'edim kamayir. We're talking about witnesses that tzaddikus atzadik she hirshu kaidim ali de edim zayman. The edim zayman made the tzaddik into a rasha, and the second group reestablishes this first guy as a tzaddik. V'yirshus edim harishayim v'alzen nemer v'apilo shayfet. Okay. Okay. Tanaban. Dal dvarim nemru be'edim zayman. There's four things that are said regarding edim zayman, which is going to eventually be also this is going to be question 6 and also question TB4. So let me just mark that down. TB4. Tanaban. Dal dvarim nemru be'edim zayman. First of all, we know ein nasim ben gushim and chalutza, as we already established why. The ein goylin or miklat, they're not going to go to Golas. Now we have two more. Vein mishalman is a kaifer. They're not going to pay. They don't pay kaifer. What is that? Says Rashi. Im ha'idu, if they testify b'shor hamuid regarding a wild animal, shahargas adam, it killed someone. Now b'huzmu, they became an imzayman. V'yimachayavin es abalim kaifer. So they should have to pay kaifer. As the pasuk says, in kaifer yushas alav. So we say that the din is they don't pay kaifer. So we'll see why. And lastly, the in nimcharin be'evid ivri. They're also not sold as an evid ivri. Says Rashi, im hiduhu shiganav. If let's say they testify someone stole, the ein lo mal shalim, and the guy has no money. So when a person has no money, we sell them as an evid ivri. The nigma dino limchar could accept nimcha beginevasai. So basically, in this case of Rashi, that he doesn't have enough to pay, the reason he doesn't become an Eved isn't from the pasuk, but rather l'char should be a svara. Okay. But anyway, the inim charum Eved ivri. So these are the four, which is again answer question 6 as well as question TB4. Ben Gushman Chalutza, Golus, Kaifer, and Mechiris Eved ivri. The inim charum Eved ivri. You also are not mishalim al pi atzmo. Let's look at Rashi. So im huzmu bebeistin, you became an edom zayman in beistin. V'hispik bal din lahamidan badin al hazmasan. You weren't able. The bal din wasn't able to take you up. Ad shibarchu, you ran away. Uval bebeistin achi. You went to a different court. The Haidu Shahuzma based in Pliny, and you admitted that you were an Eid Zaimim elsewhere. So for some reason, in that situation, because it's Haidus Piv, so you don't have to pay. Okay, now let's understand this. So we said that already. Then Galori Makkot Kadamran. Where did you learn that? Why don't you pay kaifer? Again, by accusing a shor muad that it killed a person. Because the whole reason why you have to pay kaifer is a kapara for the person, and these people didn't. There's no din like this, says Rashi. The reason why you have to pay money, the value of a person, we'll say which person. So the din is that it's a kapara. Kapara ninhu. Because their ox didn't kill anyone. Okay, this is right. So I wrote over here. So what if their shore didn't kill by killing a person? The Edom Zayman are killed, even though they weren't, Machal Shabbos or whatever it is. So you're punished. Should be the same thing. So the Ramban holds that kaifer isn't a chiyuv, rather a way to get out of his misa. The Ramban would hold also they're not chayiv malchus since there was never a chiyuv. However, the Rambam holds you do get malchus. Okay, I ain't that machlokes the Ramban and Rambam. Anyway, so man tadiko for kapar. Who is this? Rabbi Shmuel ben Yochanan ben Broiki Desanya. The pasuk says v'nosan pidyon nafsho. They have to pay for a person's value. Whose value? Right, the person who was killed by an ox. So you, the owner of the ox, has to pay the main nizik, the value of the person who was killed. Shmuel ben Yochanan ben Broiki to make mazik. You have to pay the owner of the shore has to pay his own value. So my law, the marsaver kufra mamoina. So what kaifer is mamoin because this person lost his life, so you have to pay his value. Marsav for kapara. The kapara is me, my life. Maybe I should be killed, but instead I pay my value. So we see he holds kufr kapara. Amar Papa, no. Look, the kuliyam kufr kapara. Maybe everyone holds like that. The hachabakimifki marsaver ben nizik shamina, marsaver ben mazik shamina. The question is just how you evaluate. So my tamai do rabbanan. So why did the rabbanan taka say that you should pay the main nizik, the person being killed? So never hashas salamata, never hashas salamal. Malahon benizik avkan ben nizik. So when it says it over there by hashasa placing him, so it says Rashi ben nagiv isha hara, that when it comes to a woman who is pregnant, right? Kasher yashas olav bal isha. So in that case, you have to pay the mei vladais. So that's obviously the value of the nizik, and that's of the one who was damaged. So therefore, also over here, you pay the main nizik. That's how they learn it out from that connection. Fine. I've come to nizik. Rabbi Shmuel v'nosen pidyon nafshuk. It says no, you're supposed to pay for the pidyon of your own nefesh, which sounds like as the maziks or the Baal HaShor. So Rabbanan in pidyon nafshuk siv, it does say that harmiu ki shamina ben a nizik shamin, where you're valued by the nizik. Okay. So the fourth thing that we mentioned is someone said you stole and you know the guy's broke and you're always going to become an Eved Ivri, and you became an Zoimim, we don't make you into an Eved Ivri. Some Rabbam Nunal Amemer Hanimil Hecha the Isle. Maybe it's a situation where they have money. Maybe in a situation where the person was rich that you're accusing, so he would never have gone to as an Eved Ivri. So I also won't. In a case where he doesn't have any money, afagav the isel who did who, even if they do have mizdavnu, they would still be sold. Or Rabbi no. The they should say, ant haviloch. If you would have money, mi have mizdavnu, you wouldn't have had them been sold. So anami lo mizdavninon, we should not be sold either. El some Rabbam nunol meimer hanimil hecha the isle did who, where either of them have money. However, if they don't have, no one has, then they would be sold. So apparently, sometimes they are sold, right? If no one has, if the Adam don't have any money and this guy doesn't have any money, so then maybe the Adam would be sold. I'm only rubbing no. The only time you sell is if someone stole, but not when it comes to Adam Zayman. So therefore, never do we say that they will have to go and be sold. Okay, that is the din. So what is the punishment? It's not so clear what the din is, but that is the answer. Let's see, TA1. We're going to stop there. TA1. B'gemar yolaf malchus be'edem zaymin k'goyin be'ben gerusha mevtztiku. Maduo yolaf loisana. So he said because tavilei lav she'ein bo ma'isa adkan.